Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Observable Flutter. My name is Craig Labenz, and I'm your host. And today I'm joined by an esteemed returning guest from Observable Flutter canon. Hopefully that this episode is not as seismically impactful as last episode was, which is a joke that we'll get into shortly. But before we dive too deep, do recall that today that this is the Flutter community, and we all know what that means. We're going to hold ourselves to our own sterling mental image of ourselves. Okay, so today's guest is coming in hot from Poland, a head of mobile development at LeanCode. I'm very excited to have him back. Mateusz Wojtczak. He's really just a luminary, I would say, in the Flutter community. I've seen a lot of his talks, and just an extremely high quality developer working on a one-of-a-kind product in the Flutter space. So Mate, welcome to Observable Flutter. Would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Craig. Thank you for having me here. Back again with the patrol staff, of course. So yeah, you already introduced me pretty well. I'm Mateusz, and I work at LeanCode, and I'm also one of the patrol guys from the team. And here I'm representing all the way because we just got a new merch, patrol mugs.
Ooh, that's a nice mug.
Yeah. You want one?
I would drink coffee out of that mug.
Because we're gonna see each other pretty soon. So because of Google I/O, so I can bring a mug. Yeah, I can bring a mug. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, I would be so honored. We've got somebody here from Google Cloud Tech. I don't know who's running the handle over there, but great to see you. Good morning from California, indeed. Yeah, so last time you were on the show, I mentioned that hopefully this wouldn't be as seismically impactful of an episode as last time. The stream about a year and a half ago at this point ended a bit unceremoniously as I got a tsunami warning on my phone. And we had to wrap things up real fast so I could go, look at the news and see, like, am I actually in any danger? It turns out I was in no danger at all because there's a lot of mountains in Mountain View, and those mountains were creating a really nice ring around where I live from. And also then nobody was hurt at all, and there was basically nothing. So it was a total false alarm. But still, we hope to have no tsunami alerts today. That's our goal.
Yeah, exactly. And so one and a half year ago, we had an intro to patrol. So we tried to, we actually set it up because we made it before the tsunami. So we set it up on your computer and ran the patrol challenge app, which is our an example that's pretty much a nice showcase of all the functionalities and features that are unique to patrol. So like you mentioned in the title of the stream, right now we have a 4.0 release, and that's very important for us. And why it's very important for us? Because it's actually something that we call a proper 1.0. This 4.0. Okay. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you just feel like, okay, now I would call it a 1.0. And when we released 4.0, this was this moment for us when we felt like this is maybe not complete, but this is a ready product. Like we and why we are like we feel like that is because of the web support, which was the pretty much number one issue on our GitHub, and a lot of users asked us about the web support. So it was something that we were thinking about pretty much since the beginning of Patrol, but there was always something else, and we always were we were a bit scared about it. And this is also a nice story about being scared of developing a big feature, because it was something like, web is a whole different story. Like I can actually
is.
share my screen if it's okay.
Yeah, I think I'll allow it.
Let
What with
me
that being the whole point of the stream is
yeah,
for you to walk
we
us
can
through.
have a podcast as well.
Yeah,
It's popular on YouTube right now.
it
Okay,
is.
so this is the almighty Patrol docs page, patrol.leancode.co, and here is a Patrol 4.0 announcement, and there's a nice article about Patrol web support and why it was hard in terms of before coding it. So the diagram of architecture, like we mentioned in the first stream about Patrol with mobile, is that we have to do a lot of stuff to appear as a native end-to-end testing framework, so that our tests are like Android tests, like iOS tests, so that from the outside you don't know even that it's Flutter. Because of that, we can be run on any farm. So if there's it's mainly for Flutter enterprise companies, because they come and they say, we need end-to-end tests, and we use, for example, I don't know, Browser Stack or Firebase Test Lab or Sauce Labs. There are many popular farms for all the mobile testing, and they say, okay, we have that, and we have to use it because we already have a contract. We already use it for other apps, something like that.
Right.
And there was this issue that Flutter was a bit different, because it's like every framework is a bit different, right? Like it's a normal thing. So Flutter tests are run from Flutter. Flutter driver needs a host. Flutter integration test is only for Flutter code, so you cannot interact with native stuff. And there was a gap in there. And some enterprise companies told us, for example, that quality assurance department didn't allow Flutter because they cannot test it, or they have to use some workaround solutions that are not Flutter, so that they cannot do it so well, and so on. That's why we needed to be very much mobile testing, Android and iOS. But web is so different. It's a whole different story, and we were scared that we made a whole lot of assumptions that because we are on mobile, like what's like, for example, that we have a mobile app, and on both Android and iOS you have some test app. I would say some idea of a test app that tests the main app under test, for example. And on web, there's no app. There's no app. Like you just run an URL in the browser. So we didn't know how it works. The same goes with the first phase. It's a discovery phase. So we actually have to ask the Dart engine, like we have to run the Dart runtime and ask the Flutter side from the native side, how many tests are even there, like because they are only all in Dart. So we don't know that from the native perspective. So we have to do the discovery phase, ask about the tests, and so on and so on. So there was a lot of stuff that was pretty much intuitive right now for us, because we do that for, I think, 4 years right now. Patrol is like about 4 years old. So, from that perspective, we already just assume that. And every time that new person comes to the Patrol team, they don't know what we are talking about, and we just have to explain it to them. But for us, it's like, okay, yeah, that's obvious. And now a new platform, especially that when we introduced macOS support, it's very much like iOS. It's like most of stuff is pretty much the same. The APIs are very, very similar, and there are just minor differences. And here we were very scared. So the issue is that before we started web, everyone wanted to estimate it, how big it is, how large it is from perspective of the development. Would it take us, I don't know, a week, a month, half a year? And it's also hard to estimate it if you don't know it. We can guess,
Indeed.
but we also have some budget, and we have to tell our LeanCode I would say, founders that we don't know how much is that, and we don't know if we should take it up right now or not. So, what's the lesson from that? One of our team members, they actually needed it once in their project, and over the weekend, he vibe coded it. He took some AI of choice and he just vibe coded web support, and just uploaded the video on Saturday, on Sunday, something like that. A video of the whole scenario from the example app that we use, but run on the browser. And we were like only like the awesome reactions, and everyone was like tada, and celebrating like whoa, like giga chat moment, like whoa, the guy just came and he said I just did it. And it was actually very much like a breakthrough moment, because then we could ask, okay, so how much complicated is it? How much complex, like how much code was there needed from AI? We can look into that. He just pushed that to the branch or made a PR, and we could read through and say, okay, so we can just we had to just make a few decisions, but we knew that we have to pick some web framework to use, web framework for testing. So there's Puppeteer, Selenium, a couple of them, and one of them is Playwright. And Playwright is an open source framework for end-to-end testing for web. That's right now the most popular. And we saw that it's very much trending and it's becoming a standard, like everyone uses it. So we thought, okay, let's use Playwright, because from a short, chat with Gemini, it turned out that it might be a good choice. The comparison of a couple of them, and we thought, okay, Playwright. So he just assumed a Playwright, and he did the vibe coding part. So then it was much easier for us, because the question was not how big is the feature, but it was like, how much is it to make it production ready, like so that we can, without a fear, proudly merge it to the main branch. And that was, to be honest, like pretty easy to estimate. So we went after it, and this is the story that if you are scared about it, because everyone was scared, and it turned out not to be a half a year engagement. Like everyone thought that it's like a lot of work, and it was always at the top, and everyone said like, we have to choose something else because this is too large and we don't have right now. We cannot fit it. And so so then like, let's just do a vibe coding session, and it's really helpful. So right now we have this comparison table.
That story reminds me, by the way, of like being afraid of a feature for a long time, and then finally being, from one force or another, being forced to face it and discovering that it was not complicated all along. I a couple of years ago was making this academic game. I mean, it was an academic exercise. The game was multiplayer Pong. I ended up giving a talk about it at FlutterCon Berlin, and I'd pursued so many different things because I didn't really want to do like UI rubber banding and like easing and handle that. I didn't want to implement that logic to hide the latency of just physics and the internet. And then after I exhausted all these other possibilities, I realized like, oh man, I actually have to do that. And then it literally took me less than 10 minutes to do. And I had been trying other solutions for months. And this is pre-AI, I didn't vibe code it. This is before LLMs could write code. And it took 10, it was just like, oh, I guess I would do this for the function, and I do that, and then I'll just like lerp it, and I was done. And I felt so silly. So anyway, that's very relatable to me. Okay, but you're showing us this table.
Yeah, we love shortcuts. That's why, like we as programmers, and we don't know where, if we think about some solution that doesn't seem to be the super shortcut, then we don't want to do it right now. And this is like, I think the lesson. Right. So this was the first thing. That's what was huge from our perspective in Patrol 4.0 was the web support, because a lot of users wanted it, and it appeared, which was not so, for me at least, it was not so obvious that there are a lot of companies that use Flutter only on web. Because typically we told companies, just test it on mobile, and like you have, I don't know, 90% chance that it works on web, because you build from one code, and it's just something you can do right away. Just test your mobile version of the Flutter app, right? And you can test the widget tests and golden tests and unit tests are like platform independent. So that was something that we could tell before the web support, but it appeared that a lot of companies are using only web, only Flutter web target. So that was very important. And but another thing is, like I mentioned, that we assumed Android and iOS. So we introduced Playwright and Web. And then there's the next thing, which is now we have to rethink about talking to the platform. Because the third platform is not just attaching the strings. Because before that, when we introduced macOS, it was just the same like iOS. And here there are concepts that are totally not mobile and so on. Yep. So before it was $.native when we did the first stream, and we wanted, for example, to do something with native permissions or native dialogues. Every time we wanted to step out of the Flutter world, we did $.native, and after that, on this object, you could just basically call any functions that are native related. Native meaning platform. So like the first thing is native. Flutter is native, right? This is the first thing that we always say. So that's why we changed the naming to platform, because this is actually platform and not native.
Yeah.
Right?
That makes sense.
This is much more, especially that native is also a keyword. I think like it's not a keyword, but it's highlighted. You can check it out in your IDE if you have a Dart code. I think it's something from Dart 1 or something like that, maybe from before, but if you write native, it's going to be highlighted differently. And it was actually very convenient.
Some kind of reserved word. Yeah.
Yes, but before it was very convenient, because when we showed the code that was native, it had a different color many times. So it was really nice to show it, because you could see the native parts. But we thought native is related to FFI right now. Like many times when people think of native call, native function, they think of FFI. So we wanted to be more the idiomatic with the Flutter community. And since on Flutter website you have multi-platform framework, right? This is like the one of the like main lines. So we thought like platform is the good one. And also we wanted to find how the API should look like. So this was a great challenge, because before we just had one API for two platforms. So, we had just native.tap, and that was just a common method for both platforms. But then
it was good until it wasn't.
Native, it was good until native 2. So we did a thing that a lot of frameworks did before, and we were always laughing of them. So this is something that when we introduced native 2, it was like in the team we had a daily meeting, and it was like, okay, look what we become. It's just like it's literally
native like 2 underscore final underscore 2.
yes, and but we didn't want to break. Of course, we didn't want to break the API for users that have stable tests and so on. And we just wanted to test drive the new approach. So before a couple months before the release, we also had this native 2. And we thought, okay, let's introduce iOS selector and Android selector. So we can, because Finder is something that's also idiomatic to Flutter testing, right? When you are a Flutter dev and think Finder, you think of a Finder class from Flutter test, which is a first-party library. So we don't want to have any mismatch with and mix up with the first-party naming, because this would be the worst. So we thought of selector. This is something that's pretty obvious in end-to-end testing world. But then web came, and we thought, okay, so with web, there are so much different interactions, like browser dialogues, iframes, keyboard comes into the play. So a lot of different stuff. I don't know, opening a new tab, something that is very hard to fit into the previous API. So we thought, okay, let's do platform, and let's do the differences explicit, because we didn't want something like this was the main discussion, that if you, for example, if you run platform iOS as press back on iOS, what should happen, right? Because there is no back button. So one person says nothing. It should be what's the word? The word no up. And another person says exception, because if it's a no op, then you could have wrong code in your test. So maybe exception. But then pragmatic people say, no, I don't want exceptions, because then I have to have if statements and something like that, and something that's implicit and I don't know about it. So we said, okay, let's make everything explicit when it comes to types. So we just introduced Android, iOS, and web on platform, because we thought this is the best way to be less flaky, more stable, and future-proof. We won't have to do another breaking change. This is something forever.
Now, users, of course, still have to do like if statements, right? Or do you, because we've got the Android.pressback there, so that line of code is going to be able to be run everywhere, or no?
Yeah, so this is the answer. So we thought, let's be also pragmatic. So we introduced some common things to the mobile part, if you would like to have, and something like a tap. We thought that this is something that could be everywhere, because it's just for the convenience. And also we introduced something, because some people like to have more like declarative way, so they don't want ifs. So then they might want the maybe actions. Yeah, so this is the main thing. And I think one more big thing that we introduced is the VS Code extension that I can show you in anti-gravity, actually, which is here. So this is also something that users wanted us to deliver, is that patrol tests can be seen in the testing tab, and that you can go here and actually, run it. Yeah, and see this icon and debug it, because it's also non-trivial, of course, because we have our own CLI and we have to do, all the native stuff. That's why we needed to do some custom stuff to attach the debugger. So this is the extension, and let's see the web part. So we can launch I will launch the app first on the web, so that you can see, because we have a showcase path, so that you can see what are the web challenges, for example, or things that users would want to test in the Flutter web app.
And earlier we were all waiting on Flutter. Now we're waiting on Chrome. Flutter's finally innocent.
It might be a bit slow on my computer because we are streaming, and I have also an Android emulator. Yeah. Is it this? Yes, it is. Okay, so let me just go to settings, Chrome settings, and change the theme. I will show you why. Because, okay.
Cover your eyes, everybody.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that, it's tricky, for example. So yeah, start the test would be that you have to change the theme to dark to pass. So let's do that. That's better. Then we can continue to next test. We have to enter the secret key combination. That's also something that we didn't care about when we had only mobile apps. And we reveal the hidden button. And now we are testing responsive layouts, because this is another thing that you resize windows. So I'm doing that, and now I can continue. Then I have a cookie. This is a part I didn't go through myself, but probably I will need to do this and see the cookie somewhere. Where's the cookie? Secret code.
Oh, there it is.
I can copy it like that.
Honestly, that's the code I was going to guess.
Yeah.
I was going to guess that.
And here you have an iframe. This is also something that users told us, right?
Yeah.
Iframes. So scroll down in an iframe to find the password field. Here I have to, I don't even know what's the correct password. Can I just do anything?
I was going to, ASDF would be what I would say for a very simple sequence.
Okay.
Try ASDF. That to me, I wanted that to be so
This is funny. We have to see the code.
Okay, so the idea here, by the way, while you're looking this up, is like this is a manual step, but in practice, is that what is Playwright what's going to drive this whole process? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 looks like.
Yeah, we could have known.
A couple more guesses, we would have got there.
Yeah. Copy and paste. Is
Playwright supposed to do this?
Yes. And also we have this beautiful alert, like it's JS alert.
Yep.
Oh, I can see Piotr in the comments with the password. He's the guy that vibe coded and the first version.
Oh, nice.
Hello.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, and this is the old school quiz that we already did in the first call. So at first stream. Yeah. So right now, what we can do, and it should work, I underline it and emphasize that it should work. Is this. So we can finally do device Chrome. And let's see how it works out. If you want me to change the zoom or something like that, let me know.
Maybe one click bigger could be good.
Okay.
Yeah, the trade-off here is then you got to like make the terminal as small as possible and other stuff.
Okay, it's doing something. I thought I'm out of RAM because it's totally possible today.
Yeah.
Okay, it's doing something, and I'm not clicking on the screen so that you know. Yeah. So this is a test on the using code, right? And yeah, thanks to that, we can finally go through through the main, I think, platform interactions on web, because of course not all, because you know how it is. We released that, and some users told us, for example, that they need multi-tab, which is it's obvious, but you know, you can't implement everything all at once. So we had to choose something, and we have a Playwright report. I never went there. I don't know how it looks like, to be honest.
Well, we're going to find out together.
It's actually nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we had all the steps. This is also something that we need to, add, but it's actually using the Playwright actions. Yeah. So what is also cool, that Playwright is widely supported. So if someone supports Playwright, it should be pretty easy to support it, and Patrol. And I can see the comment. I'd love to understand how that was solved. If you mean web support, this is the...
Well, I think so. The comment before, they said you shouldn't be able to use password input to a Flutter input widget that easily by just using Playwright. So I think this is the friction that they were pleasantly surprised that you were able to overcome.
Let's see the code. Because I don't know either. It's Piotr's code.
Nice. Well, he's in the chat, so
maybe he's in the chat, exactly. Yeah.
We'll get some
hints. You mean here we have this scroll tool. This is rather because it's an iframe, and it's just I think it's just a classic web input. It's not a Flutter input, right? It looks like
so
it,
that could,
because we use platform web enter text. So probably when we go there.
Mean this? I mean, does that mean we're at, like, was that input at an actual DOM element and not something rendered by Flutter Canvas?
I think so. That's the because it's that's the trick.
Right. Yeah. Raphael's saying the same thing. Well, that explains it. If it's a DOM element and not a Flutter.
We can even find it. iframe challenge.
I mean, we should be able to just right click and inspect. Yeah, there it is.
True. It's true. I can do that, but I can see it's a HTML in here, so we can go there. Because so it's just another website that's not Flutter, and this is just the input. Right, and also because this is also a pretty popular thing, that you embed some third-party stuff that's just a web element into an iframe. Right. And in the test, you want to tap on it. For example, you have some, and also another thing is third-party login. This is something that's pretty much bugging us right now, is that a lot of users, of course, in a lot of apps, especially enterprise B2B stuff, you have to sign in, right? And usually, and if it's just, sign in with login and password, or email and password, and it's just
that's easy.
2 fields, it's easy. But many times you have to tap on something like sign in with, I don't know, single sign-on,
Apple,
Google, anything. Yeah, and it's so you have a pop-up, or you have a new tab. And pop-up and new tabs they are cool, because our first
I'm gonna let you talk for a second. Somebody's knocking at my door, and my dog is.
Cool. I can hear the dog.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Cool. Yeah. So the issue is that you have to actually know that we are running in the tab, because Patrol is running in the same process as the app. And on the web, it means that this is running in the tab. And when you redirect or just go to a location that's not your app, the app dies. Like, right? If you were on the debugger, the app would just, it would just disattach and detach. And this is the issue. So when you go to another page, that's for example Google, because you want to sign with Google, and typically Google would do the pop-up or a new tab, so it's cool. But if you change the location in the same tab, you would kill the previous page. Hence, you would kill Patrol. So we cannot revive afterwards. So this is the main issue. And I don't know how we are gonna solve it, to be honest. We don't have any, like all the solutions have trade-offs. There's no silver bullet. So we don't know yet, to be honest. And if someone has a nice and neat solution to that, we are very welcome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
was,
sounds that sounds tricky. Am I remembering right though from the last time you were on? I thought we did a social sign on, but I guess that was probably mobile, not web, right?
Yes, yes, we did. But on mobile, it's much easier because your app is still somewhere in the background, but the process is not killed. Because this is the same. We have the same challenge on the mobile. If you would like to test what happens if you kill the app, so we would also have that problem. But this is obviously not something that's blocking you. It's not your number one go-to test scenario, killing the app usually.
So maybe you just need to hire somebody else to vibe code it over the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Randall has a good point here with this question. Have you reached out to Stuart Morgan, who handles a lot of the single sign-on packages like Apple and Google Auth for like the first-party Flutter packages, to see how they test the web implementations?
Not yet, actually. Not yet.
Yeah, that could be a hot lead.
That it could be, yeah, to talk with Stuart. I only know that some packages, I think Google Maps or one of Google Maps packages, use Patrol, and we didn't know about it until like a week ago, and accidentally we saw that they just use it in the SDK package somewhere.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes,
that's really cool.
That was nice. Yes, that was. This is very nice. When we saw, for example,
from Junas? Is it? Yeah, interesting. I was talking to the original developer of the Flutter Google Maps plugin.
But it's not yesterday. Maps, I think. It's Google
not Maps.
Flutter Navigation, sorry.
He does navigation Maps too. Yeah.
So right. I saw that there's a...
I was talking to that guy
yesterday. It was example of Patrol test. Yeah.
No. That's great.
This is and that's also some news about Patrol 4. We changed the directory from integration test to Patrol test because it was very misleading, and for some people would like to use integration tests, like first-party integration tests, and Patrol tests in parallel. So we thought it's better to just have Patrol test directory so that no one's misled about what's being used under the hood. So that was another thing. And of course we had the issue in Flutter DevTools, I think, because Flutter DevTools they were treating integration tests like a special folder and not Patrol tests, of course. So we had some issues with that, but it's cool because thanks to that, the best thing about developing Patrol is that we learned a lot about Flutter.
I bet.
And because we had to, because of all the bugs that we had and all the blockers that we had, and also we had to, for example, solve some Flutter issues, of course, or wait for some other issues to be solved so that we can, and so on. So that's really cool because this is how the ecosystem grows and it's better. All right. So yeah, do you have any questions about Patrol 4 before we go to the next adventure that I have?
So a couple thoughts here. One, someone said my volume's a little low. I turned up the gain, so let me know if it's still low or if it's better. And then 52RK, I don't know who you are, wrote, I think Jasper looks more interesting than Patrol. Well, I don't know how to tell you this, but those two technologies don't have much to do with each other.
Yeah, it's true. And
They're-
actually, Jasper would look like Jasper would look like a DOM element for us.
For
If we
sure, yeah,
tested
yeah.
iframe with Jasper, we would have to use platform
Yeah,
extension.
Anyway, yeah, that just that's like that comment surprised me. Anyway, yeah, okay. So questions here. Well, I know one thing that you want to do in the rest of the stream is to actually build a feature, probably vibe code something real quick, and then you all have this MCP server Marionette, and we want to test it using that. So I definitely feel like it's time for some hands-on stuff. So we do.
Sorry. I saw a question about the earthquake.
Yeah, right. If last time is any indication, we still probably have another half an hour before the earthquake. So yeah, no, I think it would be great to. Well, Randall says it was a tsunami, but first it's an earthquake, then the tsunami. I'd love to see Marionette server. I've been hearing a lot about it, but I haven't spent much time looking into it or at it myself. So I'd love to see that.
All right. So yeah, we did a stream a couple of weeks ago about Patrol MCP, and it was a stream like not observable. It was we did a stream on X, Patrol X profile, and a lot of people were interested in Marionette, and I saw that it's gaining some traction. So let's just, how should we start? Maybe let's have an example. So I have the app, and first we can check if I don't have anything untracked in changes, and then I
Looks
can
like
run.
not.
Yeah, and then I can actually run the app. Probably zoom in. Yeah, so we have this conference that is called Flutter Tech Summit, and it has an app. It had an app. There will be Michael from the Flutter team, the lead of a Flutter team, on the event, and we had an app a year ago for the participants, which is very funny because when you have a event for like 50 people, you don't develop the app, and it's right. That's right, you don't. But we wanted to test out a couple of things, so we developed an app. And right now, this is our kind of an example app, because it's like internal, I would say, client. And today we're gonna use this conference app to develop some new feature. But when it's built, I will show you how it looks like. Yeah, so this is the app, but probably it's the old version, so we have to wait for it. Okay, so yeah, Marionette MCP, Dart MCP, and Patrol MCP. Those are three that we're going to use today. So what's it all about? So as you all know, we have Dart MCP. I can actually open my MCP configuration so we can see all of them. So we have Dart MCP, right? You already have had probably more than one episode about it.
Yeah, most folks here probably have that already installed.
Yeah. So this is something that allows, like, injects context, right? So this is all about injecting the right context to your LLM, to your model, when you are vibe coding or AI assisted coding. What Dart MCP is for, it gets you app logs, It can read some package URIs and of course connect to the tooling, do the hot reload, also analyze, do the artfix format and all that stuff. And it's cool. It's for developing the app. And what was lacking from our perspective was that when you actually run the app and you actually develop something and you want to validate it, how human does it is that they actually have to click through the feature. So how you typically develop like everyone is that you developed some part and you want to see if it works. So you go to the app, you tap on some buttons, you go to the feature, you see, okay, I'm good, I can go back and do some more work.
This sounds familiar. I recognize that flow. Yeah,
exactly. So, and why we do that? This is the right question to ask, because we, like AI, pretty much follows the human loop. So why we do that? Because we want to find the discrepancies between what we wanted to do and what we actually did, right? So we want to see if we are actually on track, right? And you probably had everyone in the stream that vibe coded or coded with an assistant. You probably had that situations when you actually did not the thing that you were supposed to. With the or rather the agent did a thing that you didn't suppose them to do, right? So so Marionette is about runtime verification. So it allows, when you run it, it's an MCP for your Flutter runtime. So basically, when you have an app running, like I have right now, and if I have MCP like Marionette running, my agent can ask the app to do something. Like it can, for example, tap on some Flutter things. It can get the widget hierarchy. It can take a screenshot. This is very important. I think the most important is taking a screenshot, because many times we want it to look like a Figma design, for example. And it's also about tokens count. So we want to save tokens. And when you are coding in the dark, like on Flutter and Friends, the Flutter and Friends conference. There's a, and there every time after the conference, there's a Flutter in the dark challenge when you code, but you can't see the app that you code.
Yeah,
and you know how
the
it
code
is
first, and then you run it. Yep.
Yeah, and it's very hard to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you had a Figma design, and someone told you afterwards, "Hey, it doesn't look like the screenshot, like it doesn't look like the design," you would see the code, and it would be very hard for you to tell why it doesn't look like the design. Yes. Yeah. So with Marionette, it can take a screenshot of some part and do the comparison, and let's say, okay, I can see the problem. I have the wrong padding, for example, or something like that.
So does it actually use the golden test infrastructure to compare the screenshot? How does that part work?
This in Flutter, you can actually do you can how to say it, rasterize any widget.
Yep.
So you can internally. Yeah, that's how golden tests work. So you're right. It's very similar. The mechanism is very similar, but we don't use the golden test, of course, because we don't use the test.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Okay, so you can see the app. It's on some mocked data. So it's it's a conference app. There are thousands of conference apps, like a student project. So it's so we have an agenda, and we have talk details. And what we want to implement is, we have a Figma here. It's this adding and edit note feature. So I would like to have this add note. I would like to add. Then I get this.
Okay.
And then when I actually input, I have the node,
saves it. Yep.
and I can edit it. And if I erase it, then it should disappear. Like add node should be displayed again. So pretty simple, so that we can make it live. So what we are going to do, we are using, of course, Figma MCP, like I already shown here. So we have Dart MCP, we have Figma MCP. You already did that on stream or not? Figma MCP with Flutter.
There was a Figma MCP. No, I did the Flutter Figma MCP. This was a handful of months ago. I have not ever used the first party Figma MCP on the stream.
So two quick things that are very important, like two tools are Get Design Context, which will just pretty much download the code for like the code in some HTML or something like that. So something like, that looks like the structure of this.
Yeah. Yep.
And most important, get screenshot, of course. So this is something that we're gonna abuse. And then we have Marionette. So we can connect, and we use VM service. So every time when you run the app, like here we ran the app, and you can see something like this, right? Connecting to a VM service. So this URL is important to us. I'm going to copy that. Then we can get interactive elements to know where we can tap on the screen. And then we can tap, double tap, long press, enter text, blah, blah, blah. And take screenshots and get logs, those two things. And this is a bit different than Dart MCP logs. I don't remember right now why, but I think just that we just use some other. You can also connect your own logger, because some people in production apps, you use some custom loggers, and you would like to have your own logs because you already use your own logs and not, for example, printing, and the global log.
Yeah, no, I never print my logs.
I heard about it, right? So, and Patrol MCP, this is something for later. Okay, let's do it. So we have Figma, and I selected 4 frames in here, and I even have an example prompt with the URLs, because this is important to have those URLs. Maybe let's do it right here. Okay, so one more thing that's pretty important is that we don't want to use any backend, because we don't want to write backend right now, right? So the node should be stored locally on device.
Nice.
Yeah. What's also important is use Marionette MCP and make sure that design matches 1-to-1.
Nice.
Right? We can also say that
oh, right. You've got the VM service to give it, yeah.
Yeah, it should. It can do it itself.
Find it on its own.
Yes, yeah. But let me just. But it's sometimes it can't. I don't know why.
Does it slow it down to find it on it? I mean, obviously, the answer to that is, in some sense, obviously yes. But does it slow it down like a lot?
No. It's just one step so that it can connect, and afterwards it's cool. And usually when I run it, usually it starts implementing things and doesn't care about verifying. And when it finishes implementing, then it kind of reads the rest of the prompt. It's like with humans. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
You just, if you read implement these 4 designs, you would start coding, right? So it does the same. Okay, send. But I think we didn't set up Marionette. Let's see what happens.
I
If
thought
not-
it was listed in your. I guess I don't know what the setup process fully entails, but it looked like it was listed in the MCP server.
Yes, but
Page.
the issue is that you have Marionette MCP. To use Marionette MCP, you activate it as a global tool. So the MCP server is a global tool, but to integrate it with your app, you have to do something like this, so that the VM service, so that we are an extension on the VM service inside. So we have to register this extension. That's why, and probably it's not there, but it tried to do it. Yeah, no isolate.
Check your.
Yeah, no isolate.
Check your main.dart file.
So let's see if it figures it out itself. For now, it's doing the Figma get screenshot, like you can see. Let me just show it. It's very fast. Okay, here. As you can see, it just took the screenshots. So it took 4 screenshots from Figma, right? Now I have a clear picture of all 4 designs. Let me explore the feature code. Blah, blah. Okay, it's working. So I wanted to have it on top. So that's easier for everyone. We have a main file, and it should be instead of this. So I'm saying let's not code at all manually.
Okay.
Right?
So you're not going to paste in the line that you have in your clipboard that is the correct answer.
Yes, exactly. Because you know, we could do the whole feature.
So you're expecting that it will be able to it'll find this line that it needs to add and it'll add it.
Yeah, from my.
Do you have a skill for this?
No. I only added the skill for patrol because this is something that patrol team encourages. And Marionette has, I don't know if Marionette even has any skills. And usually when I work with usually Claude models, but when I work with that, it automatically finds out within the first connect. And if the connect fails, it just sets it up. So I think it reads the README because this is just my guess. But yeah, to be honest,
it seems like a good guess.
Yeah, I don't know if it will, because maybe it forgot already, because you know the context. Maybe it forgot that I wanted to use Marionette. Then, if it forgot, we will try to help it and set it up and verify. But we will do that so that we will see that it actually verifies. This is the best part. Yeah, so because of that, it's much easier to find out bugs. And also, it's much easier if you want to if you want to code and not be present at your computer. Then Marionette MCP is very helpful, because usually when you vibe code and you have a bug, you have to do it manually to somehow check it out, or to see why it's happening, or to take the screenshot or anything like that. But if you have Marionette, it should automatically go there, see that it doesn't work, update the code, reload, or just go back and forth. So it's very, very cool within that automatic loop. So we wanted just to close this autonomous loop. That's why Marionette exists, and we saw that it's gaining more and more traction. Actually, it was even, I think this week someone gave a talk about it. It was not no one from LeanCode. Just someone
Nice.
from the community. Yeah, it was really nice.
So quick question here. Coding with Kanye Dev asks, the Flutter MCP or the Figma MCP server is currently being used, not the Figma Dev Mode MCP, right? And do you know the answer to this?
Yes.
Yes, you know the answer, or the answer to this
Yes,
question?
yes, I know, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's just the official Figma, dev mode. Yes, dev mode. Like I turned on the dev mode, and my MCP is localhost exposed from the Figma desktop.
Okay.
I know that you can also use it without Figma desktop, but then you have to change the config of the MCP from localhost to remote host.
So you mentioned closing the autonomous loop, and I ran an experiment the other day that really wasn't an experiment because there was no control, and so it was a very poor experiment, pre scientific method level experiment. But I put in a prompt to Gemini in anti-gravity, I'm going to go walk my dog. And what I wanted it to take out of that was, don't wait for me. Don't ask me any questions. I'm not here. Just go. And it did just go, but I don't know if it, that was because it never had any issues and it would have always been able to get to the end of the task. But it was like a pretty involved thing. It was like a full stack feature, talking to Firebase, blah, blah, blah. And when I came back, it had, I forget if it was 100% correct or if there were a couple small tweaks. I think it was largely good. And then there was like responsive UI changes or something. Anyway, but yeah, that idea of like not being even present at the computer, my level of trying to close that loop is telling it, the LLM, that I won't be around. Like,
yeah,
you're on your own, buddy.
yeah, totally. That's why I always do when you run Claude code, you can pass the flag dangerously skip permissions. And this is when they will never ask you anything unless it's actually related to the code. Like if it's related to some business decision or code decision that they actually want you to make, then they are gonna ask you. But if it's like if it's a question of can I do something, they are just gonna do it. So I learned that, but of course it's not so safe, and I don't encourage everyone to do that. But there are some experiments in the community right now with the autonomous loops. There's something called Ralph, which is it's all about having agent like non-stop coding. And there's also something called Gastown, and it's the part of the team that works on it is the person that worked on the Flutter team. It's Chris Sells.
Oh, yeah.
And he is, because I'm on I noticed that I'm on the Discord. So shout out to Chris and the whole Gastown team, because
Chris is quite an AI maximalist.
Yes, and he is also maintaining the Discord for the Gastown community. And the Gastown is like when it's very, I would say, poetic, because you are a mayor of a town and you have a couple of rigs, and you have a mayor and you have a mayor agent, and you have like some other agents that do the work, and you just talk to the mayor, and mayor sends the messages to the agents, and there's also a concept of mail. So they send the mail. So that it's asynchronous. So even if mayor would, I don't know, crash, or you would spin up the mayor after a couple of hours, first thing that mayor does, it reads the mail.
Read its mail.
Yeah, yes. If there are any info, and also it can send a dog to see if any agent is working properly, or if it's done the right, and read the logs. So there are a lot of stuff like that there, and it's very interesting. I tried to do some stuff with it.
Wow. Wow.
Maybe we
Do they
can
have
one
like,
day try to do that with Flutter and to, try
yeah.
to do the whole app with the guest town.
Do they have like electoral politics? Can they elect a new mayor? That would be
That would be nice.
yeah, periodic elections, term limits, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, let's see that. Marionette is not integrated yet, so
Here we
it's
go.
gonna probably do that.
So by the way, it's been cooking for a long time. I would have expected for just this note feature app, like it to kind of crank that out. Oh no, agentic gerrymandering, somebody says. That's incredibly depressing. That's actually the saddest thought I've encountered in a very long time, but also very funny. So all, it's been 5-10 minutes here.
Yeah.
Progress so far has just been on the feature, but it hasn't been able to validate it at all yet.
It's
okay.
As you can see, it's trying to use Dart MCP, but it's failing multiple times.
So
we can tell it. We can tell it to integrate.
Oh, it's giving
accept
some
all.
changes here.
Accept all. Obviously. Setup.
So you have stated here, you said before the stream, and you've stuck to it, that you don't want to touch any code, including just pasting in this one line that will help it. Like, how do you think about, why not just paste in this line? What are you, what's your philosophy on this?
Here, because I wanted to do to the AI episode, and I would never find out what's the problem if of course, obviously, because in the end, our work with MCPs and AI, like here at LeanCode, is that in the end we want to end up, and we are pretty much there, to have that autonomous loop most of the time. So we want to know if it fails, and how it fails, and why it fails. We want to know that, because it's hard to, we don't want to fight the trend. It's not because I don't want to be any, to have controversy or anything like that we don't want to code or anything like that. We love coding. It's just that we want to make tasks like this autonomously, so that we can code tasks that are giving us this spark, that we love when coding. Validate the app. Connect using this. Validate the feature. You just need. Okay, I hope my English is kind of correct.
Dude, your English is incredible.
But to be honest, this is another thing. I rather prompt in Polish.
Well, I mean, of course, it's your native language.
Because it's just that, I don't know how to say, but sometimes it's like you can just make someone think something. You know what I mean? When you talk to model, it just things that work with human work with AI very often. So when you think how I would say that so that the person would get it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense to me that you can...
it made it. Sorry, you can
communicate more directly, more efficiently in your native language, of course. Oh, this is... Wow, I've never heard this before. This is super interesting. People keep typing. I clicked on the second one that I wanted to. So benchmarks say English is the most token efficient, and which I guess is maybe not terribly surprising, given that most of the computing world originated in English, and then apparently Spanish is the second most efficient language. But I wonder, is this a matter of a couple percentage points, tens of percentage points? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I also saw these articles. I don't know why it's trying to launch it again. We already launched it. This is something that I'm maybe I have to figure it out, because when I have Dart MCP enabled, and Dart extension enabled in anti-gravity, then it sometimes doesn't know that I already use it. For example, I already run it or something like that.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when I disable the Dart extension, because I don't code, like if you don't code, you don't need extensions, because it's just taking your memory.
That's hardcore.
Because you just if you only read the code to review it, you don't need the analysis. Yeah, the full restart is needed. Oh, okay, it makes sense. That's why it wanted to do. Okay, so it was smarter than me.
It's a good joke.
I don't know if I did that restarted or not. It left some errors.
May have tried to restart, but
AI stuff. There's some error.
I tell you, AI will never catch on. Famous last words, that.
I hope my credits.
It's always funny to me. Yeah. It's always funny to me when I say, fix the errors, where it's like, yeah, they're errors. So like,
there are only two real errors. Like, okay, who asked?
I mean, I guess if you're aware that there's more, then maybe that could broadcast to you that it's like unaware of some errors, but that's also probably just not really like, I imagine in like Python and Dart, or sorry, Python and JavaScript, kind of the more duck type languages, its ability to identify where the errors even are is probably more important. But with Dart's type system, it's like, yeah, there's two errors because that's what the analysis server says.
Okay, it worked.
Is it a new URI?
No, it shouldn't be. I think it's always one per Flutter run.
You didn't have to rerun Flutter run. You're on the same Flutter run invocation.
Yeah. Since the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Verify the add edit node feature with Marionette. It's always better to tell it, because if it sees Marionette, then it knows to use the MCP, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's connecting. It's connected. Okay. So what it's doing, right? Let me take a screenshot to see the current state. Obviously, it got the screenshot. So app is on home screen. I need to navigate. So it navigated, as you can see.
Nice.
And it took the screenshot, and it's okay. Interesting. I can see the node section is already showing a saved node. That's actually interesting. It's probably because earlier I was trying to do it, but it would mean that it used exactly the same key.
Local storage. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay, now it's actually testing it. If it's working, right? You can see.
So is it going to type a new note?
Yeah. Let me now edit the text, it said.
I wonder what it's going to type. Great talk on responsive design.
This is something AI would say. Yeah, it saved it and it checked. The edit flow works perfectly. Now let me verify persistence by going back and reopening the session. It makes sense. That's what human would do. Check if it's still there. This is what I meant. Like, it just does the things you would do so that you can go grab a coffee.
That does sound good. I want to go get a coffee.
Okay, so it did all the validations. So validation results, yeah, node section visible, edit the pencil icon shown, save the node displayed, really insightful visible. Yeah, so it's really nice. And now the feature is working correctly end to end. So this is Marionette, and why it closes the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Nice.
it's pretty cool. And you can use it with web, you can use it with macOS, because we are pure Flutter.
Okay.
So we can do, so that's also nice, because that's even more flexible. That's why we are not using Patrol in here, because it would be an overkill. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I can see. You can grab one or not. Are you grabbing the coffee right now?
Oh, no. This is that was the name of our demo at Cloud Next. And
Okay.
Randall was there. So okay, you mentioned you're not using Patrol, which I guess that's because Patrol is mostly to talk to native things. So would it use Patrol if the integration test required native features?
That's a hard one. So this is much lighter to use Marionette, and much more Flutter way. So for this AI validation, like 99% things that you code within Flutter apps are Flutter.
Yep.
So that's why we thought, okay, let's do the Flutter thing that would work with all Flutter apps. It's much faster. Also, we tried to save tokens by, for example, getting only the interactive views. Maybe I can show you here somewhere when it already launched it. Okay, so it connected, it took screenshots. So what we try to not do, okay, so here you can see get interactive elements. So it's very important that we saw, for example, with I think Dart MCP, that sometimes the AI chooses to dump all the widget tree, and all the widget tree, it's usually not needed for the task. And when you dump all the widget tree, you pay a lot for the tokens, and also you inject it into the context, so it's just, it weakens the important parts.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of put in the garbage in, garbage out rule, the holy rule of AI prompting. So that's why we added this get interactive elements, because I'm explaining it, because at the first time when you see it in our docs, you might think it's over engineering, but that's why we have that like in here. What's that? Okay, so you can see this like found 33 interactive elements on the screen, like only gesture detectors, buttons, things that are from material or your app design system, because sometimes you might want your own interactive elements to be shown. But from what I saw, it didn't put any of them into the config. So it just, thanks to that, it doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's like a compressed version.
Yeah, inject
tree,
some.
just the ones that matter.
Yeah, and not to inject columns and rows and a lot of paddings, for example. So this is also important. It was important for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine you're pulling those parameters out of you must be pulling them out of the render tree. That's the only thing that knows coordinates, right?
Yeah, it's actually, you can see it in the code for Marionette. So element tree finder, interactive elements, find element tree. So we go through the element tree, and we just try to visit all of the nodes and extract the ones that are the ones we search for.
Yeah.
So we
cool.
So we ask if it's interactive. from our for users' perspective.
Yeah.
Or for example, hittable,
Nice.
like hit testable,
Yeah.
This is something that's also important. Yeah. And so if you want to see the code, of course, it's open source. So you can see it and hopefully extend with some other features and create a PR. It would be very nice. Yeah. So another
we don't have
thing,
to do everything.
yeah, exactly. But we did most of the things are done by AI in this package, because the author, that is our actually backend head of backend, he authored it. And it's also a funny thing about this Marionette that we already had it in October.
Okay.
And it was just there for our internal purposes, and no one thought about actually using it,
Releasing it.
and that it would be helpful for anyone. And then there was a post in the. That's why this is the takeaway from this is about the community and why community is important. Is that one day there was a post on X by Thomas Burkhardt. I'm pretty sure everybody knows him because he's a legend in the community, in the Flutter community, like from the beginning of the Flutter community, pretty much. And Thomas had a X post about having like Playwright MCP, but for Flutter. So it's literally that, because Playwright MCP, it's nothing about end-to-end testing. It's about just interacting live. So this is runtime interaction, literally the same. And someone sent it on our company Slack, and they sent it, and I said it was
this.
No, better. I said it's a great idea, and we should build it. And then my friend approached me, and he said, we already have it. And I said, what? And I said, yeah, we had it one day because we thought that it's gonna be a nice addition to our AI stack. And we saw it, and we said, okay, yeah, it's literally the thing that Thomas mentioned.
Was asking for.
Yes, and we released it, and then we followed up that post, Thomas's post, and we said something like, yeah, we delivered, and here's the GitHub link or something like that.
Wow.
So that we can. So it was very funny. Yeah. One more thing for today. I wanted to show Patrol MCP, and hopefully maybe it will work. So because why Patrol? We already tested it, right? You could ask. And right, we tested it, but we tested it live, and it's not written anywhere for regressions. So now we would like to have a Patrol test for that.
Yeah.
So that AI would not break it so easily.
Now, this, by the way, is why I was asking earlier if you were using actual golden tests, because you're going so far as to save screenshots and compare screenshots here. And it feels like, again, we're all about to find out how you actually implemented this. But my naive approach to solving this, if I was approaching this problem, would just be to do everything that we've done so far, but then kind of output those in like a golden test friendly format and allow golden tests to run henceforth. But so how does it actually work?
The golden test is a good idea. One thing that I was thinking about it, but one thing is, what would be the golden file? This is the main question, and I don't have the answer yet. What would be the golden file? The first one? Because right now we could have the first one. Because if we had a Figma design, that would be in the perfect world, like every product owner would say that it's the holy grail to have a one-to-one comparison with Figma, but it's usually it would be a couple pixels odd.
Yeah.
So what to do? We have to introduce a threshold and like an error margin. Do we want to have an error margin, and so on and so on? So maybe, but it's just something that we need to answer a couple questions about. That's just something, and I didn't know what are the answers, because everyone would say differently, like everyone would answer different. That's why. And the golden file, one thing would be nice to have the first one as a golden file, for example, right? It would be enough, maybe, like the first verification. like it did right now. It could be a nice.
Yeah, that's what that would be my assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, another, like, just to take that thread. Another thing is that here we have a backend data. We have live data from some environment from the backend. And in the golden test, you would have to do the same. You would have to, because here we are, we were already from the home, we were signed in, we went to the agenda, we went to some specific talk, and then we had a golden file with a note from that state. So it's also doable, but we would have to reproduce that. So yeah, that's something that just
and a lot of that I think really gets into how somebody's architected their app, which is not really a thing that Patrol or Marionette can easily assume. Ideally your data layer is abstracted enough that you, in the test form, can easily provide either mock records or like mock data repositories that just return this exact same data, and you don't actually care about the server, but it's not obvious that every app is going to be architected to make that very feasible.
It's true, and it's also something that's much easier to do with Marionette, because you are live and you already connect to something, and you just, like a human being, you just take a screenshot or a mental screenshot, and you just try to figure it out. And with golden tests or some more procedural tests, you have to be very anti-flaky and strict, and you want to have stable things and so on, and you want to know the architecture, because in this kind of runtime verification, you don't have to know that. You can do this policy of AI has to think, and I just give the AI all the resources to think. And it will just figure it out and try to type password into the password field. You know what I mean? So
it'll be like, maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it would actually probably guess it faster than us.
Probably. Okay, so that was incredible. I think there's a lot of folks in the chat who are pretty impressed. Randall's taking a look. Looks great. Someone a minute ago said, love to give it a go. Amazing work. And then everyone's arguing whether or not there's a drink that has as little sugar as water. So, standard internet fare. So, Mate, any kind of closing thoughts here? Anything else you want to get to? How seems like a pretty darn good tour.
Yes, I owe the Patrol team to do another episode on Patrol MCP because I forgot about it.
Okay, we'll come back anytime.
So if you are okay with it, we can do that after the Google I/O.
Yeah, that sounds great. You're absolutely welcome back.
And also, please let us know what you think about this, maybe on social media or anywhere, so that we can see the feedback. Especially the Marionette MCP, it's a very new thing. We would like to know more about your thoughts and how would you approach it or use it. We already got a couple interesting things about, for example, how people cannot use it. Because, for example, someone reached out to us from some American bank, and they said, hey, I love this, but I can't use MCPs at our work environment. But I can use CLIs because why not? And because of some random compliance, right? So yeah.
In chat with
you are yeah. It was nice that you saw it, and that person helped us to also deliver the CLI part. So I think there is CLI to answer your question, and it's here. Yes. So in packages, there is a CLI because of that. So that's why I am asking for feedback, because we just wouldn't know that, there is some company that would actually make use of CLI. We thought, why, if we already have MCP? Yeah, so that's why.
God, that's so funny. Also, just the you can't use this thing because that's unsafe, but you can use this other thing that is identical.
Yeah, and it's this is funny because in Microsoft Copilot, like this work, policies. Like when you have a Copilot in your organization, some admin from another company told me that by default, MCPs are disabled. And this is probably the reason why they are disabled in companies, because people are afraid of turning on the default. It's not like everyone has anything against MCPs, but it's just the default settings is that they are turned off. And many people are just afraid of turning on something because of the security. Using CLIs is not turned off by the default.
Interesting.
That was his theory. That is just about the defaults. That everyone, if they have to change the default, they have to ask someone in the organization settings.
Nice, amazing. All right. Well, folks, that has been a refreshed look at Patrol and MCP, Marionette's MCP server, not yet Patrol's MCP server. That's going to be, that remains elusive, but hopefully we'll get back to it in an upcoming episode. So I am going to be out for the next 2 weeks doing I.O. things. If you're going to be in California next week, then you'll be able to see Mate and I, and there's going to be a very... Yes. And there's a huge Flutter-based demo at I.O. this year called Anti-Gravity Coffee Co. And it is all powered by Flutter and Firebase and, of course, Gemini, and written in anti-gravity and all that good stuff. But all the UI is Flutter, and it involves printing custom images made by Nano Banana onto your latte. That's what Randall was mentioning earlier when he said time for a Gen Latte. So I look forward to having my Gen Latte from Anti-Gravity Coffee Co. in that Patrol mug. That's what I want to do. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Maybe I will actually bring a couple more, so maybe someone would want one.
I'm sure folks will. Yeah, absolutely. So any last thoughts, Mate, before we sign off?
Thank you, everyone, for the kind words and great questions. And it's great that we made it without any earthquakes.
Yeah, I mean, there's still maybe like 10, 15 more seconds, but if we sign off quickly enough, we should be okay. All right. Well, folks, as I said, I'm going to be off the next 2 weeks, and then I should be back later in May after that. There's also an American holiday in there somewhere, so I'm not sure, but I'll be back. And until then, everybody, happy fluttering.
See you, everyone.